I get it when you're scrolling through a sea of subwoofers, the fear of splurging on something that sounds great on paper but ends up just thumping the couch and not your movies, can make you hesitate. You've probably already asked yourself, will this actually fill my living room without turning it into a bass-only zone? And do I really need a monster like this if I'm just watching Netflix and the occasional superhero flick? Those are the exact questions I ran through before I dug into the SVS PB1000 Pro pair in premium black ash. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's walk through why this sub might be the sweet spot for some people and a needless expense for others, so you can decide before the credit card swipe. First off, the PB1000 Pro is a ported design, which means it's built to deliver deep, resonant low end that you can actually feel in your chest. The real-world impact shows up when you fire up a film with a booming soundtrack. Think the rumble of a spaceship launch or a thunderstorm rolling across the screen. The fiber composite cone is impressively stiff for its weight, so the driver can push a lot of air without losing definition. In my own test, I placed one unit near the front wall, the other tucked behind the left side couch, and the result was a consistent low-frequency response across the whole room, even the far corner where I usually sit. If you have a medium to large space, say a 20+ foot rectangular room, the dual cabinet setup actually spreads the bass more evenly than a single big box would, reducing that boom 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 feeling that can make dialogue sound distant. Now, who should seriously consider the PB1000 Pro? If you're a home theater enthusiast who wants the full cinematic experience, especially with 4K HDR content where the soundtrack is part of the immersion, this pair is a strong candidate. The dual-ear voice coil design keeps the driver linear even at high excursions, which translates to clean bass during fast-paced action scenes without the distortion you sometimes hear from cheaper subs. It also pairs well with a high-output AV receiver that can feed it enough power. The dual ferrite magnet motor and extended aluminum pole piece give it the grunt to handle that continuous demand. On the flip side, if you're living in a small apartment, you'll likely find the PB1000 Pro overkill. The ports need a bit of space to breathe, and the bass can become overwhelming in a tight room, making it harder to keep the low end balanced with your main speakers. Also, if you're primarily listening to music at moderate volumes, a smaller sealed sub or a single cabinet model would probably deliver a tighter feel without the extra cost. Speaking of cost, the value proposition isn't just in the raw numbers on the spec sheet. The powder-coated FIA-optimized driver basket is more than a shiny finish. It actually adds rigidity that helps the driver stay on axis during those deep excursions, reducing wobble that can translate into muddy bass. In practice, this means you can crank the volume up for an action marathon and still retain clarity on the lower frequencies. The proprietary injection-molded extreme-excursion surround also does its job when you push the sub past its nominal range. The surround holds up without the rubbery feel you sometimes get from budget units, so the bass stays tight rather than turning into a loose rumble. However, there are a couple of practical trade-offs. The cabinets are fairly hefty, each weighing around 80 pounds, so moving them around for a different setup is a workout. Additionally, because they're ported, you'll notice a bit of port noise if you place them too close to a wall without proper clearance. A simple piece of acoustic foam can tame that, but it's an extra step that some users might overlook. Another thing to keep in mind is integration with your existing system. The PB1000 Pro's crossover and phase controls are intuitive, but they do require a bit of fine-tuning to match the character of your main speakers. I found that setting the crossover a little higher than the default around 80 Hz for my floor-standing towers gave a smoother blend, while keeping the phase at 0 when the sub is positioned centrally. If you're not comfortable tweaking these settings, you might end up with a hole in the mids or an overly boomy front, which defeats the purpose of adding a sub in the first place. That said, most modern AVRs have auto-calibration that can handle a lot of this, and the PB1000 Pro responds well to those algorithms, so you're not forced into a manual nightmare unless you want to. Bottom line, the SVS PB1000 Pro pair delivers the kind of immersive, room-filling bass that turns a good home theater into a great one, provided you have the space, the power, and the willingness to spend a little extra time on placement and calibration. If you're a cinephile with a medium-sized listening area and you crave that visceral low-frequency punch without sacrificing clarity, this is a solid investment. If you're limited on space, on a tighter budget, or mainly enjoy low-key streaming, you'd probably be happier with a smaller, sealed model.